Good morning, everyone. Excited to see you all. I understand all of you have made an early start of the day to be here for the session. So thank you for that time, and it would be good to know what are your expectations from the session before we start off. Uh, do we have a few questions from the audience that you all can share with us?
I'd like to know more from today's market perspective.
Sure.
So especially angel funding versus VC. If I want to go for angel funding route, what should I mean, how do I decide?
Okay.
Where do I take my money? Institutional funding? How do I decide?
Anything else? That's it? I think then we have very good time for you.
I also like to know there is a special for women
one doesn't. So it's not.
Hello? Yeah. It's okay now. Okay, I just wanted to know like if money is very important for getting an idea to some, at least to some level. Like if you can give some examples where people have gone with a little bit of funding and then taken their idea to
Okay, sure.
Is there some help we can expect in terms of mentoring and making our idea, more refined so that it attracts the required level of interest?
Sure. That's it? Okay, I think that's a good start. And I think then we are in the right session and we have the right panel for you to help you address all the questions. So let me start by giving you a context of why we thought of this topic and why we're here to discuss this. As you all know, and you've read, you've heard, funding environment has heated up over the last couple of years. If we look at 2015, India has reached its highest ever mark in terms of Asian and venture capital funding. We have had $7.3 billion of money flowing in to 639 deals just in the 3 quarters of the year. And we've surpassed 2014 levels in the first half of the year itself. So funding environment is heating up. Ecosystem is geared up. We have 490 active investors in India currently, up from 220 last year. And India has already paved its way for being the third country in terms of the number of startups. We currently stand at 4,200 startups, up 40% from last year. And we are just an inch away from UK in terms of hitting the second rank. But yet, a big gap between us and US. We are still just 1/10 of US. So it's not that we've hit the saturation. Potential is definitely there. And we expect to see the uptrend more and more in the days to come. So yes, money is coming, and it's important to know that while opportunities are multitude, to be able to tap into the opportunity, to build, and to fight competition, we all need money at some point in time. And hence, we are here to discuss where is the money going, what are investors looking for, and what do the best funded ideas have in common, so as to get some guidance as to how do we tap into the opportunity. And we are fortunate to have a very esteemed panel with us to address some of these questions. So our first panelist is Deepak. Deepak brings over 18 years of experience to the table. He is currently an active angel investor and has co-founded Equity Crest that works and identifies with early stage businesses and helps them realize their funding needs. Prior to this, he had a 14-year stint with Intel Capital, where he's done multiple roles from treasury to being an investment director. As an investment director, some of his investments include Savari Car Rentals, Tejas Network, Sasken, Future Software, Telebrahma, Career Launcher, and a lot of these have had successful investor exits as well. Deepak is an IIT Bombay alumni and holds an MBA and MS in Finance from University of Maryland. Our second panelist is Maithili. And Maithili is a women entrepreneur herself. She has over 25 years of experience and had a successful 20-year stint with Wipro, where she's done multiple hats from being a customer support executive to a senior vice president. She founded a startup in Wipro called One Markets and helped build a successful business around e-procurement. She then moved on to the corporate office where she managed mergers and acquisitions, business development, and innovation. And she is actually a Six Sigma, a black belt, and a certified CPM, CPIM professional. In 2006 and 2007, she was ranked one of the 25 most powerful women in India by India Today and DataQuest. And post her stint at Wipro, she and some of her ex-colleagues in 2009 founded a social entrepreneurship firm called Next Wealth, which tries to deliver IT and BPO services from small towns in a unique distributed delivery model. So that's Maithili. We also expect a third panelist, Ritesh. He's stuck in Bangalore traffic, so we know he'll join us in a couple of minutes. But in the interim, we can start with Deepak. So Deepak, as an early stage investor, what do you look for in a company? What do you think distinguishes winners from losers?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give you an example of seed stage, which is what I'm focusing on now. And I guess a lot of you might be aspiring entrepreneurs, so that's also relevant to you. And I think what I look for, first of all, is in the main entrepreneur herself or himself. I think the first thing is, do they really have a vision, or is it just a sign of the times? Unfortunately or fortunately, given the whole boom in startup investing, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are doing it without a lot of conviction, right? So to ascertain the depth of the vision, is there a real problem being solved? I think that's the first thing. And also, as far as the entrepreneur is concerned, is that person charismatic enough to attract other peers to work for her, right? Because in a startup, it's very difficult initially without capital or limited capital to pay big money and attract, veterans, etc. So that first core team, is there a charisma there? The second aspect is, I guess, the near-term execution, right? For whatever little money has been raised, is that really giving some initial outcome and traction? The third is the idea itself. Obviously, it has to be an idea which is somewhat unique, not a late mover, because late movers sometimes they win, but a lot of times they may fail simply because they couldn't raise the early stage funding, because if you're the fifth company in a space, it's very difficult to attract funding unless the first four are led by somewhat less competent founders, which is typically not the case. So I think these are some of the big things to look for. There are other aspects such as skin in the game. Again, going back to my first point, are they really serious? I'm a little skeptical of entrepreneurs who don't put in any of their own money and are immediately looking for big bucks, because that means they don't really believe in their idea. I think awareness and agility is another thing. Awareness about what the gaps are. Agility, so it's like a contradiction in some terms because you're looking for a very solid vision. But agility in thinking, non-linear thinking, because they should understand the scenarios in which they will develop the business, and that is not going to be linear for any business. And also, in any journey, they will go through ups and downs. Even the funding environment changes every 2-3 years. So do they have the ability to be agile in their thinking, combined with conviction? So sometimes you look for contradictory traits as well. So these are some of the things at least I would look for. Primarily in early stage, I guess once you go a little bit into the venture stage, then you're looking for, proof in the market, how far the company is now distant from its competitors, what did they do with the last round of capital, did they achieve anything meaningful or not, the industry is changing, so many factors are added, but this is what I would sort of say initially. Now, what distinguishes winners from losers, I think is the same question primarily, but I think over the journey of a company, along with all these traits, I think what distinguishes them is the ability, the agility, the ability to, the situational awareness. For example, while the funding environment seems to be great, but the fact is, as we speak today, the venture market is freezing up to some degree. In the valley, it is, I believe, freezing a lot. But even in India, we hear about Tiger Global and others sort of storing away their checkbooks. So can you adapt very quickly in that environment to sustain the company? Because these cycles are 1 to 2 years, so you may have to make your 9-month capital last 18 months. Right? You may have to change your strategy, or you may have to even go into an M&A situation to salvage some value rather than throwing up your hands, right? So those traits invariably come in over the 5 to 10 year life of a company, right? So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Deepak. Moving on to Maithili. Maithili, you have successfully traversed the journey from being a techie to being an entrepreneur. We have amongst us several tech enthusiasts who are planning to take the plunge. What is your suggestion to them?
First of all, very good morning to all of you. Very happy to be here today. And I'm seeing an all-woman audience, so I hope Deepak is not... I was just wondering, Deepak must be feeling completely out of place. Or maybe he's feeling very happy. Second is actually I want to compliment Kanchan. She just remembered each of our biodatas completely by heart, and she was just reeling it out.
You have such impressive profiles. I'm pretty sure audience would remember after this as well.
Sure. So, transition from a techie to an entrepreneur. So I've never been a techie as such. So I've been more on the sales and the marketing side throughout in my organization, product development, product manager, business development, and so on. But I think I understand where the question is coming from in terms of having a particular functional focus to being an entrepreneur. So I've been an entrepreneur thrice in very different sort of situations. The first one was when we started something called Zero in Markets, which Kanchan mentioned, which was in 2000 during the dot-com boom. And this was more to do with e-procurement and reverse auctions, and that was the first time that we had started. It was within Wipro itself, and this was the first time Wipro was getting into something like that, so I actually had to fight to make it a separate division and fight to give it a different name, not Wipro something, but have it called as a separate name by itself. Second one was when we acquired SpectraMind, Wipro acquired SpectraMind, and at that time it was more like a call center type of 95% call center. And when Wipro acquired it, they wanted to make it 5% back office, to move it, make it a 35 to 40% back office. So it was like a startup environment. There was no team, there was no practice, there was no solution selling, etc. So it was a second startup type of an environment. Third one is the current one that I'm doing, which is Next Wealth. It's called Next Wealth Entrepreneurs. And basically, we execute IT and BPO work out of small towns, right? And it's a social entrepreneurship firm, so it's a different other thing. So the mindset change that is required from moving, looking at the experience of these three different types of startups that I've had, I just noted down some points. One is that you need to move from inside out to outside in. So when you're doing, performing a particular function, which is, business development or technology area, you're always looking at your scope of work. But when you make the transition to moving to becoming an entrepreneur, it is more of saying that, how do I look at it from the customer's point of view, completely from the customer's point of view, and everything is outside in, not what you want to do and what you think as, what will work as the idea, but what the customer thinks. So that is a transition that has to happen. Just as an example, when we started Zero in Markets during the .com side, we said, online purchases is the greatest thing, right? So we brought, and since we were in the computer business, computers, peripherals, services, we tied up with channel partners, dealers, franchisees, etc., and moved everything online, thinking computers can be bought online. Within 6 months, we realized that nobody is buying online. In 2000, I'm talking about. We had even payment gateways, everything was there. We found that people were coming there, checking everything online, but going and buying offline. So nobody was actually buying online, right? So we realized that, we thought that this is what would work best. So it's like, inside out, because we thought this is the best as far as the online purchase is concerned. But when you looked at it from the customer's point of view, it was very new in terms of getting through payment gateways and buying and so on. So when you actually put yourself in their shoes, we realized that this was not going to work, and we had to change strategies, and I'll talk about that a little later. Second is, I think, what is very important in the transition is to have your ear to the ground, as well as have a 30,000 feet, bird's eye view. So, what Devdutt Patnaik calls as the snake's view and the eagle's view. So at any point of time, you should be able to get into the absolute details. So just to give us an example, we had a customer in the healthcare area. Just stop me if I'm going too long. In the current organization, we have a customer in the healthcare space. And we were getting into a lot of issues in terms of the delivery and the metrics and so on, quality and what we are delivering. And what we realized is, it was and we do it through entrepreneurs in these smaller towns. So at that point of time, I had to get down to the detail of what that agent at the desktop was actually doing, which was causing the poor quality. So it's the ability to be able to go, and I actually did that work for about 2 hours to understand what was happening. So it's the ability to be able to get to that detail, get your hands dirty, get onto the ground to find out exactly what is happening so that you know the issues. And at the same time, having the 30,000 feet of being able to provide the strategy and the direction to the organization. So I think this is very critical, the bird's eye view and the snake's view. Third is, I think, what I would call as matrix skills. So when you make the change, you need to have a working knowledge of, finance, technology, sales, marketing, segmentation, making the business plan, making the pitches. You need to have a fairly good understanding across, because, the VCs, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to ask you, when are you going to become cash flow positive? When are you going to make profit and so on? What are your revenues going to look like 4 years, 5 years down the line? And they would fairly get into details of understanding how you arrived at that number. So you should have a fairly good idea of these functional skills across. So I think it's important to evaluate what you have very critically, look at what you don't have, and then go and get yourself trained or go and get help in each of those areas. So that would be the third. Fourth, I would say, is having, you have to be like a lighthouse, right? Or like the North Star. So you have to provide the vision to the organization and should have the capability to provide direction. Because people are going to keep coming and asking you with, coming to you with issues. So as you build a team of course is very important, as Deepak mentioned. But assuming you have a good team, at every stage there are going to be issues that you would not have encountered before. They're going to come to you with those issues. So you should have the ability at that time to give that direction, keeping the vision of the organization in mind, right? So that is very important in terms of charting out the vision, the direction, what will we do, how will we do it, by what time frame. Fifth, I would say is, many of us, when we work in large organizations, when you start getting into, when you become an entrepreneur, you have to actually set your ego aside, right? You have to be prepared to be the peon as well as the CEO in the initial stages. So there are the situations where you will be actually making a pitch to a customer at the same time you're organizing the conference room for your clients to come in, and you're organizing for coffee to be served and so on. Not even organizing, you're serving the coffee yourself. So ego has to be kept aside. The task has to be done, the work has to go on. It doesn't matter what type of work it is. So you should be prepared to do that. Sixth, I would say, is the mindset in terms of compensation. So sometimes it can be a real, you're earning a fairly good package in an organization, and then when you get out, suddenly you find that you're not having all those RSUs you're used to, or ESOPs you're used to, or all the business class travel that you're used to. So the compensation and the perks that go with it, there has to be some, you have to tone down your expectations in the initial stages with respect to that. And sometimes that can be a very, very difficult thing to handle. But then when you get into it with that mindset, I think it's much easier to handle. Last, I would say, is there is no soft landing. So when you're working in an organization, you have enough cushion. There is somebody else who can support you, or you go to somebody else with issues. Here the buck stops with you, right? And there is no soft landing. So it's like, jumping out of the aircraft, not knowing whether the parachute is going to open or not. And so it's exciting. I mean, I don't want to give you the negative side of it. It's exciting, it's fun. But you have to be prepared for that, because there are going to be things thrown at you from all directions. And you don't know what is going to come your way. The moment you know that these are the sort of issues which are there, you're much better prepared. But when you don't know what is going to come your way, you have to be on your feet, thinking on your feet, and trying to resolve those issues. Last point is, I think, there will be, every startup goes through ups and downs. I would say it's more like a sawtooth. So when the downs happen, you have to be prepared to be able to bounce back. Your back is going to be to the wall, and it looks like there is no way out. But believe me, there is always a way out. I think Ritesh has just joined. Just in time. So believe me, there's always a way out. So it is the capability to be able to think laterally and come out with a solution or a strategy. And I found that even when we were doing this, I was giving the example of Zero Markets. When we realized that nobody is going to be buying online, and all the work that we had put in for the 6 months, 7 months was actually going down the drain, we completely changed the strategy and moved into making this online system into a e-procurement or a reverse auction system. And we were one of the first in actually doing that. So there is always, and believe me, you'll be changing strategies every 3 months, and you have to change strategies. It's not that what you think is going to work is actually going to work. So it is the ability to be, even when your back is towards the wall, there is always a way out. You have to figure out what is that. It could be completely changing the way you're looking at things. It could be mergers and acquisitions. There is a whole lot of things that you can do in that direction. And there is a very interesting framework by McKinsey. It's the 8 degrees of freedom, which basically gives a structure to how you can do lateral thinking. So if you just apply that and say that, basically it talks about looking at it from the product or the service or the channel, the geography, the distribution, and so on. There's some 8 different ways of looking at it. So it helps you to, gives you a structure to how you should do that lateral thinking. So I think it's moving the mindset that needs basically to change. These are the 8, or there are more, but I'm just outlining the top 8, which requires that mindset change. But it's an exciting change, and I think you just evolve as a person. Forget about the ability or the ability to address the market or the functional skills, but I think you evolve as a person. What you would learn in 5, 6, 7 years in a corporate, it's all condensed into 1 year, right? And that's the growth personally as well as professionally.
Thank you, Maithili. That was really insightful. And we have Ritesh joining us just in time. Okay. To introduce Ritesh, Ritesh has over 16 years of experience in venture capital, product management, business planning, and field operations. He joins us from Helion Ventures, where he currently serves on the board of Truly Madly, Housing.com, TalentPad, LifeCell, Mast Kalandar, and has previously served on the board of Taxi for Sure as well. Prior to this, he was a vice president with IDG Ventures, where he looked at internet, mobile, and digital media investments. He has been a product manager with Adobe and has also held field operation roles with Synopsys in India, Europe, and Singapore. So that's Ritesh. Yeah.
Actually, first of all, thank you very much, Kanchan, and I really apologize for being late. I don't, if there is one big idea that is waiting to be funded in this industry, it is how to solve the traffic problems of Bangalore. So, Kanchan asked me to talk about the trends in entrepreneurship and the startup space in India, and I have prepared a little bit, but would love to tailor the message to the audience. So, would love to first understand the mix of this audience a little bit. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Okay, 1, 2, fantastic. How many of you want to be entrepreneurs? Wow.
Come to him, he'll find you.
And those of you who want to be entrepreneurs, how many of you have already thought of an idea or a space that you want to start in? That's a fair bit, very nice. So maybe I can start a little bit, start by talking about the broad areas, the broad trends and the areas of opportunity. Then I'd love to answer questions when we get into the Q&A on your particular areas. So, as we all know, the last 5 years in the Indian technology space have been driven by massive adoption of technology by consumers. We started Helion in 2007, and at that point there were 20 million internet users in India. And every company that we used to meet that was an online business, we used to ask them, what is your offline strategy? And today it sounds absurd to ask that kind of question, but the fact is you have to be where your customers are. And if the customers were not online, we used to ask them, how do you reach your customers on the phone? Do you have feet on street to reach your customers, and so on. From 20 million, we are now 8 years later, we are sitting at 400 million internet users as of this month. That is a massive, massive change which has predominantly been driven by smartphones. Of these 400 million, approximately 300 million users access the internet exclusively through smartphones. Now, just think about what this means. The US has a total of around 350 million internet users. China has approximately 600 million internet users. Neither of these two countries has experienced a large base of users adopting the internet for the first time ever on smartphones. I don't know, many of you would have relatives or friends who have adopted the internet recently in the last few years, right? Your parents, your relatives, typically older relatives or younger children would have adopted the internet in the last few years. And what do you do first when you start using the internet? Google. Well, are you from Google? So it used to be true till a few years ago, till 5 years ago. But now we live in a world where messaging and social networking get adopted first. So when my mother first started using the internet exclusively on her smartphone, she started with WhatsApp first. Right? Then she discovered the joys of Facebook, and her day went out of the window. Complete nights. So a typical user starts with social networking and messaging on the internet. Then our experiences moves on to content. You know, my mother moves on to news as the next thing that she adopts, you know, browsing a little bit. That is when Google comes in. Then, incidentally, India is the first country where email is not amongst the top 3 services that get adopted. And I don't have the figures for China, but certainly in the US, people start or used to start adopting the internet through email. India is not there. So you move from social networking slash messaging to content to email, then to purchasing digital goods online, which is typically train tickets, plane tickets, hotel bookings. IRCTC is the #1 e-commerce platform in the country. And then, after you have developed the confidence of booking travel tickets, then you start buying things online, right? So while India has approximately 400 million internet users at the top of this funnel, using all the messaging and social networking platforms, it has only 35 million people who buy stuff online, right? And to me, that is the #1 opportunity in the Indian technology space. The past 5 years have seen growth driven by adoption. The next 5 years or the next 10 years will see growth driven by consumption digitally. Just for comparison, this means that the percentage of e-commerce in retail as well as in services is about 1% in India, compared to around 10% in China and around 9% in the US. So there is a 10x growth from here, even if no new user joins the internet over the next 10 years, which is itself an unlikely event. But there's a 10x growth from where we are standing in consumption online. And to me, that is the #1 opportunity that is staring us in the face. That opportunity will manifest itself in multiple ways. The first way is just increasing consumer adoption of transaction services. So if you look at large verticals, retail has had some penetration online. All of us know Flipkart, Snapdeal, Amazon. But there are very large verticals, healthcare, for example. There are very few online players in healthcare, financial services. After Policy Bazaar, you'll struggle to name any other online financial services player. Then we have some good adoption in transportation, but the level to which travel has been adopted online in more developed markets, India still lags behind significantly in travel. So the first opportunity in my mind is just increasing consumption of end user services online. The other option that this opens up is for businesses to adopt the internet. So there are about 50 million SMBs in India. That's 5 crores. And they have virtually no technology penetration. You know, a small shopkeeper doesn't even have a POS system. So the mobile gives that user an opportunity to enable his business digitally. And that opportunity in our head stands at approximately $50 billion of value that can be created on that front. And not just through selling software to these SMBs, but also connecting these SMBs to their consumers and these SMBs to their suppliers. That creates an opportunity for services and network businesses that has hardly been tapped at all. So I'll give you an example. We were one of the first investors in the online taxi space in the country. And at that point, probably the biggest question we asked was, will the taxi driver ever learn how to use a smartphone? And not for voice or SMS, but will the taxi driver ever learn how to use an app? And please remember that the context 3 to 4 years ago was very different from the context today. And turns out that you don't actually need a PhD to use a smartphone, right? It needs to have real value for your business, and the product needs to be simple enough to use, which was the challenge that companies like Ola and Taxi for Sure and indeed Uber have solved. So digitally enabling the small business of India is a massive opportunity staring at us as well. A third opportunity in my mind is disrupting the existing online disrupting existing online businesses in India. So if you look at it, the V 1.0 of online businesses in India are approximately 15 years old, 15 plus years old. I hope I'll not offend anyone if I name some of those businesses. But companies like Naukri, companies like Make My Trip, companies like Shaadi.com, companies like Just Dial, these are all 15 plus year old companies. Right? And some of them are our portfolio companies. Make My Trip is our portfolio company. But the fact is, in the technology world, there are refresh cycles. And I think the time is right for some of these companies to get disrupted. How many of you use Naukri anymore? Like one person, right? For your career needs, what platforms do you use? LinkedIn? Do you think LinkedIn needs to be disrupted as well? I personally think so. I get so much spam on LinkedIn. I have probably now around 5,000 people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn, and I must have met maybe 5% of those in real life. So LinkedIn as a platform has, I think, outlived its utility. So there's a massive opportunity to disrupt these online, existing online players. We have ourselves backed a few companies. In order to disrupt Shaadi.com, we have backed a company called Truly Madly, because we believe that society has moved on from the time that Shaadi.com was founded in the late 90s. Similarly, we talked about Naukri. Make My Trip, I think, is already getting disrupted by people like Oyo Rooms on the one hand, and the airlines directly on the other hand, and indeed Google on the at the third front. So there is an opportunity to create version 1.0 services with the first theme that I outlined, and version 2.0 services with this theme. In terms of numbers, I think there is $500 billion of value that is waiting to be created over the next decade. And it only needs smart entrepreneurs like this group to take that risk and take that opportunity by the horns. Thank you.
Thank you, Rikesh. So we had a couple of interesting questions before we started the session. I think I would like the audience to introduce themselves and just reiterate the question so our panelists can address them. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Aditi, and I'm part of from my entrepreneurial perspective, I'm part of an IIM Calcutta team, and they have a very good idea. So that's the background why I'm to this session. My question is, let's say I have an idea, I build a product. Where do I go now? Should I go angel funding route, VC route? Because now even VCs are coming into that space. How do I decide that, and who should I go to? It's a subjective one, but I'll expect this group to help me make the decision.
Deepak, would you like to take it up?
Sure. I think that's an absolutely fair question, which is bound to happen in the market that we are in today, where seed rounds are being funded by VCs as well as angels, right? Which is not always the case. The way I see it is there are two ways to look at it. One is, do you have a surplus of options, first of all? Many companies, they don't necessarily have to make this choice, right, in the first place. The second thing is there are upsides and downsides to both. So let me tell you what those are. So if you raise angel funding, then your next round is a function of your own execution. Maybe if some of the angels that you have are influential and can therefore open doors for you, for VCs, etc. So the downside is the angels don't have the checkbook for your next round in most cases, right? Or a very limited checkbook. But the upside is that the incoming VC does not even expect them to have that. So if they don't put in money in your next round, it's not such a big deal. If you raise money from a VC, then yeah, they have bigger checkbooks. It also means that at times you may have to extend the raise beyond what you had in mind. for a little more dilution. The good news is if the VC has a brand and also is, the top VCs generally add some decent amount of value, so that's good. What it also means is that when you go for your next round, you are essentially relying most likely that this VC will at least participate, if not lead that round. Because if the VC is not interested, then there's very little chance that you'll raise money. The signaling effect is very huge. So these are the upsides and downsides of angels versus VCs. Also, I think it's about speed, which is becoming a factor in the Indian market. It was not the case earlier. You may find at times that angels can move faster. VCs can also move, but in general, they may have a slightly longer procedure. So that's what I would say, but I think if Ritesh wants to add anything.
So maybe a slightly different perspective here. I think everything that Deepak mentioned is absolutely bang on. But I would say before that, you need to answer a more fundamental question to yourself. How much money does your business actually need? I would argue that more businesses die of indigestion than of starvation. So it is often tempting to raise more money than you actually need. But that we have seen, including in my own portfolio, we have seen that that is a bigger cause of trouble. If your business needs, so my suggestion is think about maybe the next 18 months from this point, how much money do you need to execute? If you are in the space of, I don't know, if it's an e-commerce company where you need to buy inventory, put warehouses in place, have a distribution network, then you need a large amount of money. Then 1 crore check from an angel is not going to cut it. But if you are in a company that does not require high upfront investments, I would strongly advise you to raise only as much as you need for the next 18 months, execute, and then be in a position where the investors are running after you to fund you for the next round. As opposed to raise, let's say you need 1 crore and you raise 5 crores at this point, the investor would expect you to make that amount of progress in the next 18 months, which you may not be operationally capable of doing, or the industry may not support that speed of growth. And then you are setting yourself up for failure for the next round. So in addition to the aspects that Deepak mentioned, please do keep in mind how much money you actually need.
An academician. I just want few thoughts on how is online education going to be in India in coming years. Suppose I read in many newspapers or something saying that foreign universities are coming here. Suppose if I, as an academician, I want to prepare the content for my students, I cannot beat Coursera or OCW, which are online webinars or trainings kind of thing. And there are a lot of copyright issues all will come into. So suppose some foreign university comes to India and my college is also existing. So tomorrow I may have to enter into an online education from my college also. So how it is going to be from education point of view? Because even for my son, when I look for, he's writing NSTSC exam today, lot of online training things have opened for school children, but it's not worthy. I want them to read the book, they are not ready to read the book. For example, Merit Nation or something, he's behind it. He wants to read in iPad, not on the book. So I just want few thoughts on how it is going to be. Thank you.
I think it's a reality that the next generation will not be reading books like we used to do. So as long as you're reading it on the iPad, it is fine. And there are various other things available like video, text, and so on. To give you an example, there is an organization called Guru Learning in the US. I don't know whether you've heard of them. Started by a person called Prasad Ram. It's an NGO. Prasad Ram founded Google India and Yahoo India. His vision is right to education for children, and he's also extending that to universities. And his vision is to educate 1 billion children by 2020. And the concept is it's just a platform that he has built. And there's enough open education resources which are available. So based on the platform, all these open education resources are put into a particular taxonomy and structure within that platform. So all that the student or the teacher has to do, it's basically, the front end is like a Facebook between the teacher and the teachers and the students. And so they go and the student clicks on, the teacher creates a collection. So if it's a topic like gravity, the teacher creates a collection of articles or PowerPoint or video, etc., creates a collection which the student will then go and look at and learn. So it's multifaceted, right? It's just not the books, but multifaceted type of learning. And through that, the teacher gets to know what type of learning suits the student best, through videos, through PowerPoints, through articles, and therefore more and more the system actually throws that at the student. And there is analytics behind it. The student does more things, he gets many likes, and then there's a ranking and a system like that. So I think the environment from that point of view is fantastic for children. And yes, we all feel that they are not reading enough books, but I think this is a completely different type of environment. It is just not about reading books, it's understanding different, looking at what Howard Gardner used to say of multi-kinesthetic skills. They're able to pick that up. And I think we have to go with that sort of environment. And there are enough MOOCs online for the universities to look at specific areas of learning. And it's not just about what subjects that you have and you're going to go online and learn from there. It is more about what you're interested in. So you could be interested in learning piano, for example, and looking at that, and you're expanding on the skills that you want to expand on rather than going by the curriculum. So I think online education from the point of view of universities is not much has been done except from the point of view of the MOOCs, where you have the opportunity to do it. So I think there's a huge opportunity. So the university can partner with some of these international universities. I think it's going to be a huge value add as far as the students are concerned and from the learning point of view.
For some people who are not from the entrepreneurial background and who wants to, by that I mean they have not done MBA degree or they don't have any family entrepreneurial background. So what are the steps you would suggest? Because this person will have idea and they have the perseverance to start a business. So what is the process you would suggest so that the idea becomes reality into a business?
First of all, an MBA is probably an impediment to entrepreneurship, not an enabler. So please throw this idea out of your mind that you need an MBA to become an entrepreneur. An MBA probably makes you risk averse because you have to recover the cost of your MBA. And also you start comparing yourself against your MBA classmates that so-and-so is a VP at so-and-so firm and here am I, a struggling entrepreneur. So, in fact, I would advise you not to go for an MBA if you want to become an entrepreneur. I mean, Sachin and Binny Bansal of Flipkart, yes, and that's why I'm not an entrepreneur anymore. So, Sachin and Binny of Flipkart are not MBAs, Bhavish of Ola is not an MBA. There are a few MBA entrepreneurs, but I would say that was a fluke.
Can I just add to that? Every Kirana shop that you see here is run by an entrepreneur. And they probably have a +2 sort of an education. And they run it very smartly and they make money. So it's not the big online companies that are entrepreneurs. It's every small shop that you see on the road are run by entrepreneurs.
Now, as far as your other question about how to bring your idea to reality is concerned, I think at first you need to focus on the basics. And the basics are, one, find a team for yourself that is good at execution. You can't implement everything yourself. And I think there has been a ton of research that says that single founder companies are significantly less likely to become successful than companies with 2 or 3 founders. So find yourself a team first. Second, focus on the value to your customer in the beginning. If you are providing sufficient value to your customer, then the other things will fall in place as you grow. You'll not always remain a 2 or 3 person company. So don't think too far ahead right at the beginning. How will I how will I ensure deliveries in Jammu and Kashmir is not a problem that you need to start thinking of today. Think about your immediate future and delivering massive amount of value to your customer. And then the third thing I would encourage you to think about is, does this space allow the creation of a large company, or is it fundamentally a small business? So as long as you can think through these basics, who is going to execute along with me? What is the value that I'm creating for my customer? Does this space give me an opportunity to create a large company? I think you're all set. You don't need an MBA for sure.
I think we had a related question from someone in the audience here on what kind of support or mentorship can a new aspiring entrepreneur have in terms of accelerator programs or angel investors or VCs doing a mentorship kind of program. So I think one of you would like to take it up.
Yeah, I think, given that India is a nation of first-time entrepreneurs and will probably be that for the next few years at least, people are searching, where do I start, etc. I think there are a few accelerators in the country and more are being added every day. I think some of them add value, but I wouldn't say all of them do. I think at some point it is a bit perhaps over-positioned in my own sort of sense that I have. So what I would advise you is to find a co-founder who has somewhat complementary skills and wavelength, and a mentor come initial investor. Don't necessarily look at acceleration programs as the only way. If you have do your diligence and find something that is really up to it, because that's 5 months of your time, then you should go for it, right? So I think acceleration helps, but I'm not sure it really helps. That's my view anyway.
Let me just add to that. There are enough, I think, mentorship and ecosystem support sort of programs. You could become member of TIE. There is NASSCOM's 10,000 Startups, which is there in Diamond District. So you could get in touch with the TIE for Women. There is a TIE for Women that you could be a part of, or there is a CII for Women. And all of them have these, not necessarily accelerator programs, but they have the ecosystem support. And definitely 10,000 Startups of NASSCOM is something that you can reach out.
Hi, I'm Sahiti. I'm representing a company called JetSet Clean. It's an NCR-based startup for laundry and dry cleaning. So my question for the panel is, right now we are bootstrapping, and we've been told that for a startup to get funded, you have to pick the right investor. But in reality, we don't pick the investor. Investor picks us. So how do we solve this? And also, when is a company ready for expansion? Say, right now we are in the NCR region, so we are in 3 cities. And if we want to expand to the other cities, is it just the money, or is it ready with some traction and revenues?
Yeah, so I'll answer some of the question. As I was saying before, I think, yes, you should ideally get to pick your investors, but that's not always the case, and it's not necessarily that problem has to be solved, because at the end of the day, what's the worst thing an investor can give you? Capital, right? So if it doesn't add value, that's fine. You figure it out. As far as scaling, etc., I think, yes, it's a function of the money. It's also a function of where you think is there a reality to your business which is more sure than what it was 6 months ago? Right? There's a natural evolution. You start with a hypothesis, then you try to see, like Ritesh was saying, am I creating customer value? Do I know how to execute this? Do I have a sense of how I could open another city? Right? Are my customers coming back? Once you begin to see those things, and also competitively, is there value to be created in this? Not just from the obvious service, which is, say, laundry, but maybe in the way you do it, or some other add-ons which makes you a little different, so that over time that can sustain your hook, right? I mean, the obvious service is not always the value, it's sometimes how you do it. The algorithm, the technology, the operations, and things like that. So if you have that confidence that you made a lot of progress, then you should, go to the next step. Again, going back to Ritesh's point, not necessarily to raise like huge amounts of money, but look at it 12 to 15 months at a time. What can I achieve? Which will really take me to the next logical step in my journey to begin to capture the market, and how much money do I need, who do I need to hire, etc. So I think that's the way to do it.
Deepak and Ritesh are not going to like this, but I just wanted to say that not necessarily you have to be funded. The organization that we are running right now is completely self-funded, and it's not some huge amounts of money. So the moment you start thinking in that direction, you will figure out ways and means of running that business in such a way that it's on a shoestring budget without requiring the funding. Basically, the point is to say that the companies that we are starting today are not necessarily being started to get that funding and to look at an exit. Not necessarily. Because I think more and more business is going to be done online. So organizations are being built online, not necessarily with an exit in mind. That's my viewpoint.
Yes, I don't like that. But I'm not going to debate that point. I wanted to touch upon the second question that you had asked on city expansion. So I have a thumb rule in my head for funding stages, and something similar can apply to city expansion as well from an entrepreneur, which is that the first round that an entrepreneur raises is to prove that they can execute, and to prove nothing else, just to see if they can go from nothing to a certain number of transactions that they can manage and keep the customers happy. The second round, in my opinion, is to prove a product market fit, that the product that you have is actually resonating in the market and the customers actually like it and want more and more of the product, as measured by whether your customers are coming back, how much premium are the customers willing to pay you, whether your customers are recommending the product to other customers, and so on. And the third round that you raise is to prove that you can make that business work, not only the product. So you can make the economics of the business work, and it can be a profitable and sustainable business. You can think of a similar framework for city expansion, that in the first city that you're in, you need to prove whether you can yourself execute or not. The next few cities that you're in, let's say the first 3 cities, you prove that the customers in more than one city actually like your product, and then create a business by expanding into further cities. So think about using that kind of a framework.
Thank you, panelists. Just as closing remark, and to build upon what Maithili said, we hear a lot about consumer-facing models getting funded, but it's not necessary that you have to get funded. If you look at enterprise companies from India, such as Zoho, Tally, who've made it big, all of them were bootstrapped. So while funding is important, it's also important that we get funded only when it's actually needed, and not just for the heck of it. As final remarks, Maithili, because we have quite a few aspiring women entrepreneurs amongst us, and you have been one, what would be your closing remarks and advice to the...
Hey, can I ask one last question, because I was just wanted to ask it. So I'm Shaylee from Microsoft, and I'm a program manager there, but I really wanted to understand how far into the idea phase, when you have an idea, how far you would have gone before you approach the angels and the VCs and all. See, one is the ideation phase where you have idea, you put in the idea kind of thing. The second is the execution phase. So would you have been kind of created the prototype and then said, oh, let me now approach investors? Does the investors really look forward for that execution phase, or they look forward for oh, you have an idea, you have put it in, you have thought fully about it from the finance perspective, from the execution perspective, and that's all is required? Or is it oh, you should have a prototype before you approach the investors? But what is that time when you should go and talk to the investors? That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, so at least my view and my experience is that if you're raising money from other than friends and family, right? Third-party investors, and you're not a repeat entrepreneur or somebody or some, great corporate exec superstar with 15 years of experience, then you really have to have something beyond the idea. Because ultimately, the idea is highly replicable, any idea, right? So you can't just bet on an idea as an investor. You need something, right? Maybe a very basic working product, maybe even deployed a little bit to convince a third-party investor that this is more than an idea. Otherwise, I think it's difficult.
So, first of all, Sherry, I wanted to congratulate you for standing up and asking the question even when the session was over. I think we need a little bit more assertiveness from this community. So thank you for doing that. I think, so similar views, but I feel that the ecosystem has matured at least a little bit over the last 8 to 10 years. 10 years ago, without an actual product on the ground and without actual customers, there was no hope of getting funded. Today, I think there are at least a certain set of backers who would be willing to back a good team with a good idea. But certainly, just the idea without the accompanying team is going to be hard to get funded. But angels, I think, when they see a team which is a good fit for the business that they're planning to run, I do think that there is a decent probability of getting funded if you have a good team around and a well thought through business plan.